packed between the buildings, necessitating thermal underwear, plentiful fleece, and jackets zipped to the collars. Maggie Dawes, who considered herself a free spirit consumed by wanderlust, had always loved the idea of a New York Christmas, albeit in a look-how-pretty postcard kind of way. In reality, like a lot of New Yorkers, she did her best to avoid Midtown during the holidays. Instead, she either stayed close to her home in Chelsea or, more commonly, fled to warmer climes. As a travel photographer, she sometimes thought of herself less as a New Yorker and more as a nomad who happened to have a permanent address in the city. In a notebook she kept in the drawer of her nightstand, she'd compiled a list of more than 100 places she still wanted to visit, some of them so obscure or remote that even reaching them would be a challenge. Since dropping out of college 20 years ago, she'd been adding to the list, noting places that sparked her imagination for one reason or another, even as her travels enabled her to cross out other destinations. With a camera slung over her shoulder, she'd visited every continent, more than 82 countries, and 43 of the 50 states. She'd taken tens of thousands of photographs, from images of wildlife in the Okavango Delta in Botswana to shots of the Aurora Borealis in Lapland. There were photographs taken as she'd hiked the Inca Trail, others from the Skeleton Coast in Namibia, still more among the ruins of Timbuktu. 12 years ago, she'd learned to scuba dive and had spent 10 days documenting marine life in Rasha Ampat. 4 years ago, she'd hiked to the famous Paro Taksang, or Tiger's Nest, a Buddhist monastery built into a cliffside in Bhutan, with panoramic views of the Himalayas. Others had often marveled at her adventures, but she'd learned that adventure is a word with many connotations, not all of them good. A case in point was the adventure she was on now. That's how she sometimes described it to her Instagram followers and YouTube subscribers. The one that kept her largely confined to either her gallery or her small 2-bedroom apartment on West 19th Street, instead of venturing to more exotic locales. The same adventure that led to occasional thoughts of suicide. Oh, she'd never actually do it. The thought terrified her, and she'd admitted as much in one of the many videos she'd created for YouTube. For almost 10 years, her videos had been rather ordinary as far as photographers' posts went. She described her decision-making process when taking pictures, offered numerous Photoshop tutorials, and reviewed new cameras and their many accessories, usually posting 2 or 3 times a month. Those YouTube videos, in addition to her Instagram posts and Facebook pages and the blog on her website, had always been popular with photography geeks while also burnishing her professional reputation. 3.5 years ago, however, on a whim, she'd posted a video to her YouTube channel about her recent diagnosis, one that had nothing to do with photography. The video, a rambling, unfiltered description of the fear and uncertainty she suddenly felt when she learned she had stage 4 melanoma, probably shouldn't have been posted at all. But what she imagined would be a lonely voice echoing back at her from the empty reaches of the internet somehow managed to catch the attention of others. She wasn't sure why or how, but that video, of all the ones she'd ever posted, had attracted a trickle, then a steady stream, and finally a deluge of views, comments, questions, and upvotes from people who had never heard of her or her work as a photographer. Feeling as though she had to respond to those who had been moved by her plight, she'd posted another video regarding her diagnosis that became even more popular. Since then, about once a month, she'd continued to post videos in the same vein, mainly because she felt she had no choice but to continue. In the past 3 years, she'd discussed various treatments and how they'd made her feel, sometimes even displaying the scars from her surgery. She talked about radiation burns, and nausea, and hair loss, and wondered openly about the meaning of life. She mused about her fear of dying and speculated on the possibility of an afterlife. They were serious issues, but maybe to stave off her own